Rishi Kumar.
All right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining in. So today is going to be our last class for the Java session. And yeah, so thank you guys for coming throughout this 8-week program. We've gone over a lot. So today, what I'm planning to do, and instead of starting a whole new game and doing all that, I really want to reinforce a lot of the concepts that we've learned, because I feel like instead of creating all these games as we've been doing, if you guys are in the Python class, we've been doing that. We did one last or we've done one. But yeah, so instead of creating these games, I want to do a little bit more practice with all these concepts, which I think would be pretty good for your Java programming skills. One other thing I want to talk about is the hackathon that's coming up. So if you guys can see my screen. Yeah, so we have this hackathon it's going to be June 13th to June 14th, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So this is just going to be an online hackathon. Obviously, with everything going on with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have to do remote, but mainly you just want to work with a group of your friends or whoever you can find, whether it's in this class or outside of this class. And then you guys can create something solving any problem related to COVID-19, any web app or mobile app. If you guys, obviously, seems very overwhelming to you if you have never created a web app or a mobile app before, obviously. So The main thing about hackathons though is just to like learn and basically get everything you can out of it, spending the time to work through different problems. Like in my first hackathon, I learned a lot about like the process of creating any sort of project or any product or anything like that. We really learned how to debug, how to create programs from scratch and all that. So yeah, it's hackathon. I see you guys talking about hackers. So yeah, you're not hacking anything. It's just called a hackathon. That's just like the name to like create something. So yeah, so the sign up is here, rishikumar.com/hackathon. I'll send that link in the chat. So yeah, you can sign up here. All your information goes here, and then yeah, that can get you ready for the hackathon. Any questions on that?
Oh yeah, I had one question.
Yeah, sure.
So will the hackathon, like, will we have to use all the knowledge learned in this class, or can we start out like knowing very little about it?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, yeah, if you've been going to I know you've been here throughout all of our weeks in this class, so you probably have like a pretty good like coding understanding. But like, you can use anything you've learned outside of this class, anything that you've learned inside or during this class, any skills. You can even be Googling up different stuff that you don't know yet during the hackathon. Like learning throughout the hackathon is a big part of it. So just any skills that you can get.
Sure. And can we just like go through our previous programs and stuff? And also, will we be getting like a large project if upon request for today's homework?
Okay, so yeah, so Caitlin, I think was gonna do something with the homework. So I'm not exactly sure what's planned for that, but if you guys want like a larger project, obviously nothing is assigned in this class, as you guys know, but if you guys want like a larger project, we can put that together and send that out this week. There's never going to be a due date on that, obviously, because we don't have any more classes, but like you can just work on that whenever you have the time. And if we have a lot of people, if you guys can type in the chat right now, if you guys would like that, like a large project for us to give you to work on with Java. If one person requests it, then I can send it to them too, whatever works. So yeah, I think, yeah, I can put something together like that for after the class. But yeah, let's get started so we can get through some of the material today.
What language is the hackathon?
Oh, so the hackathon, in general, hackathons are going to be in your language of your choosing. So if you're in the Python class or the web design class, you can do either of those, but you can also use Java, whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Okay.
Let me share my screen. Yeah, so REPL.it is totally fine for this class too. You don't really need to, or IntelliJ or Eclipse or whatever will work too. Just as usual, whatever you feel most comfortable with. All right, so I'm going to start out with creating a class. We'll have our main method as we have done usual. So yeah, so today is just going to be a lot of practice with all the concepts that we've learned. We're going to get into a little bit more complex practice problems and stuff. Some problems, like if you guys are in high school and have like AP computer science offered at your school, some of these would be like problems that you would find in those classes. Like I took them straight from when I took that class in high school. So yeah. Let's get started. So we're going to just be creating a bunch of functions today. So our first one is going to be given an array of strings. So an array of strings, you want to return the count of the number of strings with the given length. So this does not make much sense right now. Let me type out this function. So one thing you guys want to notice is when I'm typing out this function, I'm including that static keyword, because in a main function, obviously we have public static void main. We've learned that to access these. So the reason I have this main function is to be able to access these other functions that I'm creating in this class. So I'm just going to have this main method and then a bunch of functions down here, everything below that. So if I don't include the static word in my function, then I cannot actually call that in my main function. Java will throw me an error. So you just want to make sure you include that static. But yeah, so let me just show you guys examples of what this function is supposed to do, just so we have a good idea. So if we have, you guys can see here, you don't need to write this down. This is just an example. But if you have an array of strings like that, so A, B, 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 C, 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 and then the 1. So the 1 represents the length of a string. And then what you want to return is the number of strings in that array that you're given that have that certain length. So that's the main problem. So so what we want to start out by, actually, I named this args. I'll name this words, actually. Shouldn't name it args, but yeah. So what we want to start out with is, so whenever I do a problem like this, so this is like this is an AP Computer Science problem. And if you take that class in high school, this is like sort of the concepts that you're going to learn. And yeah, so one thing I like to start out with is basically saying in my head usually, but in this case, I'll say it out loud, what we need to do, but like just saying it in English. So what I want to do is basically loop through this array of words. So I want to loop through words array and then find all words with given length. So those are the two things that I need to do. So let's loop through the words. So in this case, I think I'm just going to use a for each loop. If you guys remember how we do that. For a string word in word. So remember, this string word is just a temporary variable I'm creating to represent all the different words. And then I'll
just a very quick question.
Yeah.
You not write for string word in words instead of having that symbol in like between word and words?
Oh yeah, so I think you're confusing this with Python. So that's what we do in Python. We say for word in word, but this is the for each in Java. Yeah. So yeah, so we have if this word length. So remember, if we get to get the length of a string, we want to use length with the parentheses. So that's how we access that function of string. So this is how I get the length. And if that is equal to the len, so that is what is given, the length of my word. So if my word, then I want to. So now what I see now the problem that I'm seeing is that I need to keep track of how many words. So I'll just say int num words is equal to 0. So that's how many words have that length. So that's just going to be my variable to keep track of it. And then I'll just increment this every time. And return the num of words. So yeah, so this is pretty simple. We're just going through each word. And then if we find a word with the target length, then we're going to increment our number of words that we found with that length, and at the end we'll return that. So now the way I can just test this, I can just say system.out in my main method, system.out.println words count, and let me quickly just make a words array. I'll just copy and paste this example. I'll put this in the chat too, so you guys can get that if you guys are trying to copy that down. Oh, I forgot one quotation there when I copied and pasted it, so make sure you have that quotation. But yeah, so this is going to be our words array, and then what I want to do is just call words count on words, and we'll say 2. So we want to find all strings in this array that have the length 2. So now if I go here, I'll call it Java on class 8.
Wait, since it
And
was
we get
kind of
1.
like a review session, I just wanted to ask you like a question about the overall Java code that we've been doing.
Yeah, sure.
So, you're saying like num words plus equals 1. I know that num words, by that it's saying num words equals num words plus 1. What's exactly the significance of that? If you could write that in quotes below, like in the comment, like if you could write that with the slashes below the code, that'd be great.
So you mean like this?
Exactly.
So my understanding, I think, is that if the word length is equal to its length, so if the length is correct here, then it'll repeat that word. If I believe, it'll repeat that word again in the command prompt.
So yeah, so basically what this is doing is, I didn't exactly understand what you just said there, but it's going through each word, and it's just saying that if the length of this word that I see in my array, if that's equal to the target length, which is passed as a parameter, then I'm just incrementing the number of words by 1. So this number of words is basically representing the amount of words I can find with that target length.
So where exactly are we defining that length? It's just saying int length. So where are we defining it?
So that is the parameter that I pass in. So that's what we pass in when you call the function. So this is saying Okay, I want to look through my array of words and I want to find all with length 2. Or I can change that to length 1 if I want. And then I can return it, it'll give me 2.
Oh, correct. So it'll basically increment the number of words based on the number of words that have that length of 2, is what it's
Yeah,
doing.
exactly.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, that was our first one. So that one was pretty simple. So another one that I want to get to now is if we're given 2 strings, a word, a separator, we want to return the string and separator with a count occurrences of this word. So count is going to be another parameter that we get. So this, if I type out my function, this is how it's going to look like. So we get a word, then we get our separator, and we get like a count of how many times we want that to happen. So I'll copy and paste again some examples of how it should look like. So if we call this function on word x and 3, then it should go word x, word x, word. So basically 3 represents the number of times this first word appears, and then x will be like the separator. So you want to put that between each occurrence of these words. So let's get into this now. So yeah.
Excuse me, I just have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
For the original piece of code, it's saying no class declared in the source file.
Were you just trying to run this previous function?
Yes, yes. Yeah, that was exactly what I was trying to run. Correct.
Okay, yeah. I'm not exactly sure what that is right now, but for now, just make sure you have all the curly braces that you need. Then this function is outside of your main function. That could be another problem. But I'm not sure. Yeah, another thing, just make sure your class is defined well. But if you're still having problems, type that in the chat. Caitlin might be able to help you. Okay, yeah, so for repeat separator, what we want to do is create a result string. So this is what we want to return at the end. So this will represent our final product. And as we see here, in this these are just basic examples. So if you guys are eventually going to pursue a career in software or computer science or whatever, you're going to probably go through a lot of interviews when you're trying to get internships or research positions or whatever it is. So a lot of times they're going to give you something like this. They're going to just give you a description of what this function is supposed to do. Then they'll give you examples of different cases for this function. So in this case, we see that when the count is 1, that we just want to return the word. So one thing that we can do is just say result plus equals word. So remember, that will just print out I'll just print that out just to show, or I'll just return it actually. So remember, we can do plus equal with strings to add strings to one another. Let me just run it so we can show you. Word x, and for now this last one is irrelevant, but yeah, when I run this, then we just get word. So right now we just added our word. So now this handles the case when the count is 1, we want to do nothing. So what we want to do now is lower our count by 1 because we already added the word once. And then now we can do a for loop using typical for loop that we've done in the past. And then I'll add to our original string that we want to return the result. We'll first add our separator because we already have one word there. And then we'll add our word. And then at the end, we just want to return result. So then now, so we did word x3. So now if I were to run this, oh, did I forget something? Oh, separator. There we go. So yeah, now we get word x, word x, word. Does everyone understand how this one works?
Is there any way that you could scroll up and then explain how the next one works?
Would you want me to explain repeat separator?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, I see someone else typing wanting me to scroll up, so I'll just keep this real quick, this screen. But yeah, so repeat separator, we called it in our main function. We passed in, so remember, it's a word, a separator, and then the count, meaning the number of times we want that word to appear. So what I did was I first just added the word. So let's look at the case where this count is 1. So if count was 1, then when we run it, we just get word, correct? So the reason that we only get word is because, so I added the word in the beginning so that we have our word as our result. And then I lowered the count by 1 so that now after I lower the count by 1, now I know how many more times I need to add my separator and my word. Because if you guys see in this, we have our word, and then we have our separator and word, and then separator and word. So you see it's like that. So that's why I did a for loop to count. So after I lower the count by 1, it counts how many more times I need to add the separator and word together. And then using the for loop, that's how I was able to do that. So this can work with, so yeah, if we do 1, if I do 2, then it will print out word and then X and word together. So yeah, word and then X and word. So just like that.
So it's printing out word, and then it's only printing out one separator before it prints out word again?
Yeah, so that's how we wanted it in the, like how they defined it in the instructions. So we do the word, and then we do a separator, and then the word again. So
How does it know to print out the word X word even though it's commented out?
where?
You have like the word X word commented out. How does the code know to run that if it's commented?
Oh, because I run it up here in the main function.
It doesn't say word X word though.
Yeah, so this is word. So this is the word, and then the separator, and then the number of times we want the separator and word to appear. So then when we run it, it's like that. And if I change it to 3, as I did in the beginning, then we get word, X word, X word.
Could you possibly scroll down?
Yeah.
So, oh, sorry, never mind, I got it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, so now we're gonna move on to our next one. So this is gonna be a little bit of recursion, if you guys remember that concept. So recursion is the concept of basically calling the method that you're creating inside its own method. Yeah, so what we're gonna do is create another one. Oh, I need to explain what this does. So basically this will just give in like a non-negative integer, return the sum of all digits in the integer. So like given like 1, 2, 6, you want to return 9 because that is equal to 6 plus 2 plus 1. Given like 49, you want to return 13 because that's 4 plus 9 and like so on. So that's basically what this method is supposed to do. So we're going to do this using recursion. So this, I think this was a homework problem earlier during our course. So I don't know if everyone got to it, but like I just want to show like a clean way and a nice way to do a problem like this, because sometimes you'll actually need to do this in either a program or like an interview or something. They're pretty important problems. So remember, with every recursion, we start with our base case. So what is our base case? It's basically when we want this program to terminate. So how will my thought process now is how will I be able to get each digit individually in this integer and then sum those up together? So how can I get the last digit of a number? So for example, if my integer is 343, how can I just get a 3? So one way that you can do that is if you do 343 mod 10, then that will equal to 3. So that's how I can get just that 3. And then if I were to do 343 divided by 10, that's going to equal 34, if that makes sense. Because there's no remainders. Remember when we do division, it'll round up. And yeah, so we get 34 here and 3. So how can I use both of these together? So we'll skip over the base case right now. And I just want to figure out the case where I'm actually going to be doing this modulus division and normal division. So first off, I can start by saying I want to do n mod 10. So this doesn't really mean anything yet, but this is how I can get the last digit, sorry. Someone's asking for the GitHub link. Let me quickly send that to the chat. Okay. Yeah, so this is how we get the last digit. So let's say I want to return this last digit. But I want to be able to add this digit to the rest of the digits. So one thing now I can do is I can say get me the last digit plus, we'll call this function again, but with dividing it by 10. So for example, so actually I'll write out the base case. So the base case, obviously, when you keep dividing something by 10, you're eventually going to get to 0. So we'll say once n equals 0, we just want to return 0. And then otherwise, we want to return this. I'll just put parentheses around it to make sure it looks nice. If you guys don't completely understand this right now, don't worry. I'll walk it through step by step. So I'll just do 1, 2, 6 for now. Let me comment these out just to make our output.
Please go back to the top. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so we get 9 here. So 1 plus 2 plus 6 obviously is 9. I can change this to 3, 4, 3, what we were doing. So that should give me 10. Let me get 10 here. So yeah, so it's working. So that's good. So now I'll kind of walk through. So if we take this number 343, so that's what we're doing. So I'll sort of show you guys. So n is 343. So first thing we do is we check, is n equal to 0? No, it's not equal to 0. So we return a 0. So now what we want to do is return n modulo 10. So in this case, n modulo 10 is 3 plus some digits of n divided by 10, which is 34. So then now we have 3 plus some digits 34. So now we are running some digits 34. So now we see, is some digits 34 equal to 0? Or is 34 equal to 0? Sorry, no, it's not. So now what I'm going to do is say n modulo 10. So what's 34 modulo 10? So that is equal to 4. And then we add again 34 divided by 10. So that will be 3. So then now we're running some digits 3. So now is 3 equal to 0? 3 is not equal to 0. So now I want to return 3 modulo 10, which is just a 3, plus some digits of n divided by 10. So 3 divided by 10, which is 0. So now we run some digits 0. Then once we go to the sum digit 0, then we see that n is equal to 0. So we're going to return a 0 here. So then now our recursion is stopped. And then we see everything that we got 3 plus 4 plus 3, which is exactly what we wanted. And then that returned a 10 for us. Yeah. So someone's in the chat is saying you can do some digits using string and character operations. Yeah, that's totally valid too. But like sometimes like, it's like obviously, yeah, that's like if you see a problem like this, in like an interview or like a programming assignment in school or something like that, whatever it is, most likely they'll want you to be doing this sort of recursion just to practice that concept. But yeah, using strings and characters can be totally valid too.
Can you go to the top one more time?
Yeah. Are there any questions on some digits on this recursion, on how that worked at all? Okay,
Yes.
Cool. Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just a question overall. In the end, will you review what each part of the program does?
Oh, so all of this is not really related to each other. These are just individual methods that I'm doing just to practice.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So why is it that why can't we basically just have a definition over here? Why do we have to say public static and then say if it's an int or string?
Oh yeah, so then going again off this, so public, so this again allows us to access this function anywhere. So honestly, I don't think you have to include this, but I'm just including it right now. So the static, so the reason we include this static is because the main function is a static function, right? Because we're including the static keyword. And static functions can only call other static functions. So for example, if I were to not include this, then I get like an error right here. It says error non-static method, some digits cannot be referenced from a static context, meaning that this main function is static and it cannot call non-static functions. That's the main reason.
I don't understand how sum digits n works because it says if n equals 0, return 0. Is there an else?
Oh yeah, so if you remember, if in an if statement, if you return, then you don't really need to include that else statement because the execution stops there.
Also, automatically for any input, it'll return 0.
Yeah, if n is 0, then yeah, the execution will stop there. So that's why that's the main purpose of a base case,
Got it.
because that's where you want to stop your recursion or your execution or whatever.
And this is basically your all 8 weeks, what we're going to do today.
Oh no, this is just another example. So like I'm just saying we're going to review a bunch of our concepts. We're just going to go through individual methods just to understand concepts better and get a better understanding of what like interview questions will look like, what if you take AP Computer Science, what those will look like and stuff like that.
So would this code technically work if we erased public static and instead put DEF to define?
So remember, DEF is only for Python.
Oh, correct.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another common programming question, or interview question rather. I actually just had this as a question like earlier this year in one of my interviews. So it's basically just checking if a word is a palindrome. So if you guys don't know what a palindrome is when a word is read. If you read the same word backwards, it's going to be the same exact word. So something like radar, so that's like a palindrome. That would be true. Like this is not a word, but like A B C B A, that's a palindrome. So like basically the first letter is equivalent to the last letter, then the second to last letter is equivalent to the second letter, yeah, and so on. And then, for example, like if we have something just like truck, that's not a palindrome because that's not the same backwards. But if we have like level, that's true. So yeah, these are just different examples of palindromes. So what we want to do is basically create a function to determine whether a word is a palindrome. So I'll create another method. And this time we want to return a Boolean. Yeah, so someone typed that in the chat, GAG, that would be a palindrome. Race car is a good one. Yeah, I'll put that over here. We'll test that one out too as one of our test cases. But yeah, so Boolean, remember, Boolean evaluates a true or false. Boolean functions in general, whenever you're creating them, will always start with like an is, like it'll do like is palindrome, is word, or is number, or something like that to determine like, these are just like functions that you can call to determine different words. But yeah, so remember, so again, we're gonna take our string and determine whether it's a palindrome. So I always start out with just like the English version of it. How can I do this if I was doing this like just by myself in English? So what I want to do is I'll first check, okay, is this first letter equivalent to the last letter? Is this second letter equivalent to the second to last letter? And then if it's an odd, obviously I don't really need to do anything. If it's even, then I need to keep checking it. And
so
even,
you would take the index of the word, the respective indexes, and see if they correlate.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing that I can do is say my start is equal to 0. My start, I'll name the start index. And then int end index is equal to the length of my string minus 1. So remember, the last index of a string is the total length minus 1 because the index counting starts from 0. That's why I started the start index at 0. So what we want to do is do a while loop. So actually, before we get into the while loop, basically what we want to check is we say, if this start index does not, not start index. If the string.char at, remember we learned this earlier, this course, is not equal to the string at the end, or the character at the end, then we want to return false. So that basically means if we find that the first letter and the last letter are not equivalent to each other, then we want to return false because that means we don't have a palindrome. And then we want to basically increment the start index and decrement this end index. So we're going backwards from the end, if you guys see. So if we start here, then we're going backwards from the end and forwards from the start until the two collide. So now we basically need a while loop or a for loop or whatever, whichever loop you prefer, to make this work. So when will I stop the execution of my program? That's what my thought process is now. So I'll see, okay, I'm at the beginning and I'm at the end. So I'll keep going until they basically overlap. So while start index is less than my end index, then I'll include all this in here.
Wait, why is the end index str length -1? Is -1 the place where the or the position where the last index is?
Yeah, exactly. So the length, remember,
Okay.
gives you the total length, and then -1 gives you the last letter. The index of the last letter, yeah. So yeah, so here we have the start index while this is less than the end index, meaning that they're not overlapping. Because that once the start index is greater than the end index, then we know the indexes have overlapped like that as they're going throughout the method. So yeah, char at is a built-in method to the string class. So we went over this, I think like week 3 or week 4, I can't remember exactly, but start index, char at start index basically says, okay, I want to get whatever character is at this specific index of this string. So I see someone putting in the chat, can I do this? So if my while loop like this. So this would only work for the case when there is a odd length string. Because if I keep it like this, if I keep it like less than, then regardless of whether I have an odd length string or an even length string, when they overlap, this while loop will terminate. Because if I just keep it at not equal to, in an even length string, the indexes will basically skip one. So like one will be 4 and one will be 5, and then they'll switch. It'll be like 5 and 4 or something like that, if that really makes sense. So yeah, you can't really have this not equals to, you need a less than for this to work. Yeah, that's what he's saying in the chat, the middle letter. Yeah, that's why palindromes get a bit tricky, because you have to think of the case whether it's an odd or an even, because like, for example, like deed, that's a palindrome, that's only 4 characters, but this is like 7 characters. So you see, yeah, so yeah, that's basically what it is. And then what we want to do is, oh yeah, so basically if it is executing this entire while loop without any fail, so the failing meaning would return false, then we just want to return true. Because remember that if this return false gets executed, the entire function is done and it will exit out of the function. Yeah, I think this is it. So let's quickly call some palindromes. So I'll start out with race car. We call it, we get true. If I put like truck, that will give us false. Non, someone type non in the chat, I'll put that. Oops. That's true. So yeah, and then if, for example, if you add like another A, that would still be considered a palindrome, because you see we have NA and then AN and then just an A in the middle. So that should return true too. So yeah, so our palindrome is working. Let's keep this at race car for now. But yeah, that's cool. So any questions on the palindrome method? I would say this is like a pretty common like question that you would get in an interview if you're trying to interview at like a small company, like a startup or something. Those interviews usually aren't as intense, I would say, as like a Facebook, Google, Apple sort of thing. But yeah. Cool. So now let's get into our next.
Oh, excuse me, could you just go down real quick? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, you're already down. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna do another problem with strings. So basically the main purpose of this is to take in a string and return the reverse of the string. So like if you get, I'll just copy and paste these in. So yeah, so test should give you like this, hello should return whatever this is, and then obviously palindromes will return the same thing, so we can test it out with that too. So if you guys, so what I'm doing right now is actually like what I mainly do when I'm sort of like practicing for interviews or like anything like that. Just like I'm just continuously doing these different methods, practicing different skills, so I'm able to like basically understand any case. Like you always have to be thinking about edge cases and all that. But if that's pretty complex for you guys, so you guys don't really need to worry about this. Yeah, okay, so now we got reverse string and we take in an input string. And then what we just want to do is return the reverse of it. So I'm just going to create a string called reverse. So that will be our end output, whatever we do to reverse the string. So now we haven't really, I don't think we have done a for loop like this, but so notice how we always start a for loop at like int I equals like 0, I is less than, for example, like input dot length, then we have I plus plus. So we've always done a for loop like this. I did introduce a for loop like really early on where we start at like 10 and we can like go down to 1 or whatever, something like that. But what this basically does is starts it at 0 and you're going through the entire length of the string. But in this case, when we're reversing a string, what we want to do is start at the end of our string and basically get to the beginning of our string. So we basically want to change that up. So one thing that you can do is say, instead of int I is equal to 0, we can say I is equal to our length minus 1. So remember, length minus 1 is the last index of our string. And then instead of saying less than our input length, we want to say is greater than or equal to 0 or just greater than -1, whatever you want. So this basically means I'm going to start at the end of my string and go all the way up to the beginning of my string, all the way up until index 0. And then instead of doing an increment on I want to decrement I by 1 each time. So if you guys don't understand how this works, in the beginning, so we'll take this string test. All right, now I'll do hello. So that'll be our string. So the first time that it runs, we get the letter O, then we'll get the letter L, then we'll get the letter L again, then we'll get E, and then H, and it will terminate. So that's basically like the main thought process behind this. So now all we got to do is basically add whatever value is at that index. So remember, char at allows us to access a specific character from a string, and then I'm just getting, so this will start at the end and keep adding it to our reverse output, and then I'll just return that reverse. Let me run this function real quick. Yeah, is there a question?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I said return true for the previous one, I don't get how you had to have 3 brackets, because for me it's showing as an error, and return true is not showing up correctly in the colors that yours is showing on the same Sublime Text program.
Okay, yeah. So just make sure. So yeah, the 3 brackets I had were 1 to close this overall function, 1 to close the while loop, and then 1 to close that if statement. So make sure you have all of those, and then true. I know it's confusing because the Python is capital T and false is capital F. So make sure those are not capitalized.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it could be.
For me, when I'm adding another bracket to it, the last bracket is showing up as pink.
Yeah, so sometimes when they show up as pink, it's either you need to delete 1 bracket or add 1 more. So try either one of those and that could work.
Okay.
So yeah, so we got reverse string here. I did reverse string on hello. If we run that, then you see we get whatever this word is. And then you can do that. We can do this with test. And I'll put my name in there just to show that it's working well. That's what my name looks like backwards. But yeah. Yeah, so that's actually a good point. So I'll run that right now if you guys see in the chat. So one thing that we can do now is I'll run is palindrome. So I'll say string reverse is equal to, all right, this is just a quick demonstration. You guys don't need to write this down if you don't want to. So I'm just assigning a string to whatever the reverse of. So I'll make this, what should I make it? I'll just keep it as my name. And then what we can do is we can say system.out.println is palindrome on my name plus reverse. And then once we run this, you see we get false and then true. So the reason that we get false and then true is because the first time, so obviously my name is not palindrome. Then what I'm doing is I'm reversing this string and assigning it to a string called reverse. And then I'm adding those two together, my name and whatever the reverse of my name is. And then once those are put together, then obviously we get a palindrome, so then we get true. So yeah, that was a good point. Reverse string and is palindrome can work together to always return true for is palindrome.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that last part. Why is it that it's returning true?
It's because the reverse. So remember, a palindrome is the same, like when you have a string or whatever, the first letter and the last letter equal to each other. But so basically, if you turn it all around, if you reverse that entire string, it'll be the same exact string. So that's why when I'm adding my name plus the reverse, then that's a palindrome. Or like the reverse of my name, yeah.
Is there any way that you can explain the very bottom code, such as for int I equals input.length and all the equations?
This one?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, just remember that we've always been starting at I equals 0 because that's how we usually have been counting our indexes, starting from 0, going from the beginning of a string or beginning of an array or whatever it is to the end of that array. But in this case, what we want to do, since we're reversing that string, we want to start at the end and basically keep adding each character as we start from the end and going to the beginning to our reverse output, which is this string. So like yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. The -1 just shows where it is on the index.
Sorry, what?
The -1 after input.length shows where it is on the index.
Yeah,
Oh
precisely.
yeah, so remember the input.length -1, that will always give us the last index of our string. So we start at the end and we want to go to the beginning. That's how this is.
What does the equations after that mean? So like I less than or equal to 0.
Yeah, so the I greater than or equal to 0, that basically means we want to go up until the very first index. So since our first index is 0, we want to make sure that I is always greater than or equal to 0. And once it is less than 0, we want to stop going through our string because there's no negative indexes, obviously.
And then I minus minus?
Yeah, so that's the same thing. Since we're starting at the end, we want to keep decrementing our index so we get to the beginning because obviously the end index is greater than the lowest index.
But then how is decrementing it going to give you the reverse string?
Yeah, okay, so I'll just, since it's kind of confusing, that equation, I'll just walk you guys through it. So if we so I'll do the same example, hello. So the first time we run this, we get int I is equal to the input.length -1. So this is our input. So we'll just say, yeah, this is our input. Then input.length in this case is equal to what, 5. Yeah, so 5. So then the first time we run our program, I is equal to 4, correct? Because input.length -1. So then when we access input.char at 4, that should equal to O. Or I'll just do it like this, O. Because that is the last. And then we're saying, okay, I minus minus. So we're doing, now we get input.char at 3 is equal to L. Input.char at 2, because we remember, we keep decrementing this index. Oh, so this is the case where I equals 3, then I equals 2, then I equals 1, then I equals 0. So notice how it's adding basically each letter from this backwards. And then so now I is equal to 0. So if we were to do I minus minus again, I is equal to -1. So now we know that our for loop terminates and then we return the reverse. So notice we're adding this letter each time to the reverse string. Yeah, so line 107, I see a question. I'm just adding. So I start out with an empty string, and each time I'm just adding to whatever is currently existing another letter. Plus equals, remember, is the same thing as this.
So this would also work if for line 106 you had int I equals input dot length plus 5, if it was a 5-letter.
No, because input.length, remember, gives me the length of my string. So I want to wait. So the I basically represents my index that I'm accessing. So -1 allows me to get the last index. Because if you're
Oh,
going to do
so
a plus
for
5, that would be out of
then like some because then like some of the words would not have that 5 like character string.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, so now I want to do this. This is something that we have not really gone over. But so I got this from a website called LeetCode, if you guys have heard of that. So this is like the main, this is sort of like, I labeled this an interview problem. This is something that can definitely can happen in an interview that you get. But let me show you guys LeetCode real quick. Explore. So yeah, so LeetCode is a great way to get your programming skills up, especially if you're in high school and are thinking about pursuing a career in software. They give you all these different questions from these big companies, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, all that. Then they have all these different concepts where you can learn, and then these different problems too. So I would honestly recommend to start, if you guys want to do this, to start out with the easy problems. I think we have the tools to do some of these easy problems. So we're going to start out by doing this to someone. That's what we're going to do. I just copied and pasted. So yeah, I copied and pasted the link with, it goes directly to all the easy problems. You guys can explore the medium and harder problems if you want to, but I'm not sure if you got, based on what we learned in this class, that we'll be able to do those. But yeah, so we'll get into to-sum right now. So this is basically given an array of integers and a target number. We want to basically find two numbers in that array that can equate to that target sum. So for example, I have this integer 2, 7, 11, 15. I want to find two numbers that are equivalent, that add up to each other and give me the value 9. So in this case, 2 and 7 will be those numbers. And then I want to return an array with those two, with the index to those two numbers. So 2 obviously is at index 0, 7 is at index 1. So I return 0 and 1 in this case. Does that all make sense on how we're going to do this? On what the problem is supposed to be? Okay, so this is what it will look like. So this is what you always are starting off with, just a function definition with its parameters and its return type. So we know we're going to return
Wait, could you please
integer array. Yes,
could
go
you
ahead.
please give the whole explanation? So could you please after specific, do you know what it says?
Sorry, what?
On the line after specific, do you know what it says? Like such that they add up to a specific. Oh,
Let
okay.
me make this a little bit clearer. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so we're given an integer array and a target sum, and we want to return an integer array. So let's start out by creating our return. So I'll just call this result again. And we know that it requires only 2 elements because we want to find the sum of 2 different elements in this. So what we can do, so there's probably many different ways to do this, but with the tools that we've learned in this class, I'm going to do this in a certain way. So if you guys have another idea on how to do it, feel free to do that if you have prior knowledge. But I'm going to use like a nested for loop, if you guys know what that means. So we have a for loop here. So this is our standard for loop that we've always created. Basically, this is me just going through my numbers array and finding each number in this array. And then I want to basically say, I want to be able to go through the array again and say, okay, whatever number I'm currently on, I want to find another number that can add up to my target sum. So what I'm going to do is create another array, or another for loop, sorry. And I'll explain exactly how this works. And yeah, so I'll just demonstrate what this method will look like. Actually, to make this a little bit clearer, I'll do this. So right now, this is not the problem. I'm just kind of show you guys how nested for loops work. Sorry, 1 second. Need to do an import. So we only got like 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to do this a little bit quicker.
Can you please go back up to the import? Thank you.
Yeah, all right, I'm just gonna copy this array if you guys want to use this test array and you don't have to type it out. Oh, this should be 9, this should be 7, yeah. So yeah, so we have this array, I'm calling it, we just created this temporary array and we're calling it to the target sum 7. But for now, all we're doing is printing out each number. And this is just to show you guys how nested loops work. So, okay, yeah, so ignore this for now, but basically we get 2. All right, this is kind of confusing. Let me change this up real quick. All right, so we got I. So basically, we have an outer loop and an inner loop. So this outer loop I goes through each value in the array, and then this inner loop j basically goes while I is going through each number, j in each individual step is going through the rest of the numbers in the array. So you see here we have value 2. So if we look at our array, we have 2, 11, 13, and 5. So we begin at the value 2, and we look at the value 11 for j. Then again, I is 2, so then we're looking at 13. Then I is 2 again, so we're looking at 5. And now we increment I after we've gone through the entire array. So now I is 11, and then j is 13, 5, and then lastly I is 13, so then j is 5. So if you guys sort of understand it, basically I starts at one value, then j is looking through the rest of the values. And then now if I moves to 11, then j looks at the rest, and then I is at 13, then j looks at the rest. So basically you're starting at one value, and then the j for loop, if you guys see here, this j for loop is going through the rest of the values in the array. So I'm going to remove these if statements. So this is how you guys want to sort of set up problems like this, where you're checking within an array. So now we can see that if the value at I plus the value at j is equal to my target sum, then I'll do result 0. So this is just adding to my result array. If you guys want to make this easier, we can change this like a Boolean and just return true or whatever. But yeah, so after this, we want to break from our for loop and return the result at the end. Yeah. So now, if we were to run this, let me do arrays. So remember, this is how we print out an array. We use the import. And yeah, so we get 0 and 3 because 2 and 5 evaluate to 7.
And
So yeah, so that output worked.
Because it was a bit too fast for me to catch up. So is it okay if we don't copy the stuff at the end and refer to the GitHub link later?
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so I see someone typed in the chat, do you need a second break? So yeah, you can't, so that in this case, if you guys, do I still have this open? Yeah. So in this case, the problem stated that you may assume that each input would have exactly one solution. So we don't really have to worry about that case, but yeah, second break statement would be helpful.
And this lead code resource, is that for like Java and Python?
Yeah, so mainly with lead code, it's like they'll give you a problem and you have to solve that problem in the language of your choosing, whether it's Java, Python, JavaScript, whatever it is.
And can it be for beginners as well?
Yeah, so yeah, that's why there's a lot of those easy problems beginners should be able to do. You guys should have the tools to be able to do some of this. This is like one of those problems. So yeah, obviously they are a little bit more challenging than what we've been doing, but like if you spend time on it, I'm sure you guys will be able to figure it out. So it looks like we're just wrapping up with time. So yeah, so I think we did cover like basically every concept that we've gone through in this class with while loops, for loops, if statements, Boolean values, strings, arrays. Yeah, this is like a lot of the basics in Java that you'll need whenever you're programming something. Like knowing these concepts will always come handy. Like once you have all of these sort of concepts with arrays, strings, creating these functions and stuff, you can become like a really good Java programmer. Does LeetCode? So yeah, LeetCode, I don't think they will show the recommended solution directly on that website. But you can usually Google up that LeetCode problem. If you just Google up like whatever the name of the problem is, solution, then they can actually, you'll probably find someone who has posted it online somewhere. That's what I usually do when I'm working on those. But yeah, so the videos and the GitHub, so the GitHub will be available to you guys forever. I'm never going to remove that. The videos, I'm assuming that the tiny URL link will stay there and you guys can access that. But if not, I'll actually just put those videos on the GitHub, the links on the GitHub, and you guys should be able to access those there.
And does
So, yeah.
LeetCode, just like to refresh after these classes, does LeetCode cover most of the content that we have done in all these 6 weeks for like Java and Python?
Yeah, so I think LeetCode does have some of those tutorials. I can check. Oh, let me. I feel like, yeah, they do have a lot of like learning. Yeah, see, they have like a learning section. These concepts are a little bit more confusing, but you should be able to find some of the concepts that we've done. Another good website is CodingBat. I'll send that link also here. So these are just Java and Python. If you guys are in the Python class, but yeah, these are a lot of good problems to do. We've done some of these during class. You guys probably don't know, but yeah, I took some of these problems while we're doing in class, but these are also really good programs. But yeah, I think that should wrap it up for today and for our class. So thank you guys all for joining in throughout our sessions during this quarantine, during COVID-19. So it's been a lot of fun. Hope you guys learned a lot. Yeah, I'll be here for any questions if you guys want me to explain anything. Thanks. Oh yeah, and also we'll plan to send out some sort of project for you guys. We'll probably post that on the same Google Doc. If not, we'll be on the GitHub. So yeah, glad you guys learned a lot in this class.
Got it. Thank you guys so much, Shivam and Caitlin. I was just now starting code. Like I'd done a bit with my mom, but the majority of stuff that I learned came from you guys, and I think definitely these will go a long way, and I'll definitely refresh upon concepts that you guys have taught me.
Yeah, that's great. Glad you learned a lot.
Thanks for the class as well. It's really helped me get better at Java in general.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys learned a lot.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So all the videos, will they stay on YouTube for like ever, or will it just be you're gonna start taking them down?
Yeah, like I'll have to talk to my dad about that, but I'm 90% sure that they're gonna be up there forever. So these videos will be for you guys to access whenever you want, along with that GitHub link. So yeah.
Thank you guys like a lot, because I didn't know a lot about coding, and I will always go back to those videos because I still need a lot of help. So they really helped me a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Glad you learned a lot. And also like for whoever is still here, like you guys can always contact me whenever you want. I'll just leave. I'll send out my, like, you guys probably have some of my contact information, but if you guys, whoever's still here, you can contact me on my email. with any questions you guys have about anything coding related or Java related or whatever. But yeah, I'm always going to be a resource there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like everyone is good now. We don't have any questions. So yeah, I'll post this code right now. And look forward to the videos that are coming out and other, just like a small project for you guys. Hope you guys are participating in the hackathon. Maybe you guys can build some sort of project. But yeah, thank you guys very much. It's been nice teaching you guys.